Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I've just jumped on to do my weekend forecast, the pre-market analysis ready for the upcoming week, the week commencing 11th of October and ending the 15th of October. So let's just jump into it. So this week I'm going to be analysing these 6 pairs that you can see on the right here. These are the pairs that I'm really just looking at the minute. So without further ado, I'll start with USD Alright, so before I bring my analysis up, just looking at the price action on USD what we can see since here, we've been moving upwards, retracement, move upwards, and then another move upwards, and another move upwards. So at the minute, I'm just looking at buys on USD really just some type of continuation up there with this price action. Alright, so my analysis just popped up, and as you can see, it's not changed that much from last week really. The 4-hour order block that I mentioned last week, that was just violated. So I'm still looking at buys overall on the USD CHF structure, and for me there's 2 areas to buy from. So we've got this breaker structure here, which is caused by this area down here, which I mentioned last week, and then we've got the breaker structure previous to that, which was caused by this area down here, which I also mentioned last week, and this area here has got imbalance just above it, so it would really make sense for that imbalance to get filled before we got higher, but we could definitely still see a reaction down here. So I just zoom in on the 4-hour. So on the 4-hour we can see there's still within this daily range low, there's still a lot of area that price hasn't really come back into, so it's definitely possible that price could just dip back down into these lower areas down here and then just go out of there. So that's pretty much this prediction here. That's perfectly possible because there's going to be order blocks within this wick here and potentially within that wick there and potentially even that wick, but most likely within these 2 wicks there's going to be potentially unmitigated order blocks which cause this overall move to the high. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see price just dip down, take the liquidity from this low here, mitigate one of these order blocks and then continue upwards. But what we've also got to consider is that this imbalance here, which is the imbalance on the daily for the unmitigated order block below all this, that's clearly still not been filled really, and there's going to be a lot of unmitigated orders down here by the institutions. So the institutions really do have a pretty good reason to bring the price back into this area down here before moving higher. And a confluence to that thesis could be that these equal lows here, or relative equal lows, they will have a lot of liquidity below them. So all down here there's going to be liquidity. Now, whether or not the institutions will want to come and take that liquidity out and mitigate these orders down here, or whether just this here, which filled the 50% of this imbalance, was enough for them, we can't really know that right now. So for me, in terms of buys, I'll definitely be looking to buy out of initially the lower the daily range because it's more than possible for price to come out of this area here. But if we do see price fail to reject off that, then I'll be looking at taking buys out of this lower order block down here. And probably if we do get into that, the most ideal place to take buys would be somewhere right at the extreme down there within the wick of that lowest candle. But I would be open to taking buys anywhere within that whole range really, provided that I see price action that I want to see on the lower time frames to get involved. So that's the daily perspective. Now, considering that we did get the reaction off here, but it's not really followed through, and looking at the 4-hour, what we've got on the 4-hour, the highs up here, and then the lows here, and we did actually get a breaker structure on the 4-hour to the low. So looking at where that breaker structure came from, there's a clear order block here, and price has got to this point and it's failed to break above it twice. So to me, that's indicating that more likely the institutions have mitigated this order block, and then now they're looking at going further down. Now, to be fair, unless you're getting on the lower time frames, I think it's probably a bit late to really get involved out of this order block. I mean, it's possible that price could just tap higher into it, and then we'll get a trade out of it to go back down to at least this daily low. But for me, I'm expecting more that price will just continue now since it's already tapped it twice. So in terms of a sell opportunity, I would definitely expect some type of reaction from this daily low, even if it doesn't actually follow through. So if we get the break of structure and we get another order block here, so we'll basically get a break of structure here, and then we'll get an order block around there to sell from. So potentially what we could see is we get the continuation of this bearish order flow here, and we'll sell through here, break structure, we'll get a reaction off this daily low, and then we'll get another reaction off a new point of interest to sell, to take price actually all the way down to this area here, which is the daily impulsive POI. So what I'm really interested in on USDCHF is just buys out of this area below, definitely buys out of this unmitigated order block down here, and then potentially I would look for a sell if we do get some type of sell point of interest develop, just to take price from this new point of interest which might develop down into this daily impulsive point of interest. So that's USDCHF for me this week, and I'm going to provide a written version of this document which you can read in your own time. So if you guys want to see that, just check out the link in the description, and please subscribe if you want to see my forecasts each week, because I do put effort into making these forecasts so you guys can watch them, and I try to give you guys value. So if you're interested in my Forex content and my Forex journey, then please do subscribe to the channel. Yeah, so that's USDCHF. Sells from a new POI or from this 4H POI, or buys from one of the two daily points of interest that I've identified. So moving on to EU. Now EU, it's a lot simpler than the USDCHF structure really. We had this one break structure to the high, but as I discussed in a previous forecast, that just mitigated this area up here. Since then, we've had a break structure to the low, and now we've had a second break structure to the low. So what we're really just looking at is to continue sells on the daily time frame, looking to continue from the daily structure. So in terms of the daily structure itself, this line here, so the top of this candle, that's our daily high at the minute, and we've got our daily low is down here at the bottom of this candle. So I'm really thinking, where could price come from? Where could price continue from to go lower? So what we can see on this lower time frame, we're clearly moving up now. Now it could just sell off at any point, but I would expect it to come back to one of these order blocks before actually starting to sell off. And the 2 points that I've identified for sells on euro dollar, so we've got 1 point which is at the daily extreme, and it's also the extreme of a 4-hour range. So I think if we do get up there, it will definitely make sense to look for a sell-off out of that area. And yeah, when we look on the 15-minute, you can see there's a wick trick there. So there probably is some unmitigated orders in that area. So if we see price traveling up to this daily and 4-hour high, I'll 100% be looking for sells out of this area. Now, what we can also see, and on the 4-hour, it's just a big sort of wick candle, but it's clear on the 2-hour that we do actually have basically a pullback or a candle that generates liquidity before moving lower to actually break the daily structure. So in that sense, this is actually the last move that directly broke the daily structure. It's also the high on the 2-hour, and I believe it's the high on the 1-hour as well. We do have as well here this wick trick. So I do think this is quite a high confluence area for us to look for sells from as well. So overall, definitely just looking for sells on euro dollar right now, and I'm looking for sells from one of these two areas here. So let's see what happens on euro dollar. Of course, we could just violate and we could sell from higher up, but I won't be looking at anything higher than this point until we violate that point. So back to euro dollar. Alright, moving on to AU. So AU is pretty interesting at the minute. We had our break structure to the high previous to now a break structure to the low on the daily, but overall we can see that there's clearly this downtrend going on the daily. So for me, I'll see that as a liquidity grab and a mitigation, and I'll expect that this downtrend probably will continue overall on the daily. But looking at the 4 hour, alright, so with the daily, the way that I consider the ranges, we've got our low here, and then our actual high for the daily range is up here. So even if we do see price continue lower, it's possible that we've still got quite a bit more upside before we get that move to the low. Now, looking at the 4 hour, what I can see is this area that I mentioned last week for sells. We did get a reaction here, but it didn't follow through, and now it's actually been broken. And then again on Friday, we've had a second break of structure to the high on the 4 hour. So in that sense, we really have got essentially 4 hour order flow now and 4 hour confirmed bullish trend. So it makes sense right now to just look for buys on the 4 hour. I mean, up to the high of the daily range, there's 178 pips. Now, do I think it'll make it all that way? Probably not. But what we've got is an absolutely clear order block here, which calls the most recent break of structure. And if we go on the lower time frames, it's even clearer if we refine it down here. So we can see that this area here broke structure, so there's an order block there. Price came down to mitigate that order block before breaking structure. So in line with continuing the mitigation plays going upwards, I'd expect to buy out of here. So that's my expectation really on EU. I'm on AU, sorry. I'm not really too interested in anything else. And just one more thing, if we look down here on the 15-minute, there is actually an area here with imbalance right at the low. So the absolute ideal situation for taking this buy on AU would be to see price come down, fill this little imbalance here, and then hit this 15-minute refinement of the 4 hour order block before then traveling higher. Now, in terms of a target, what I am aware of also is that if we look over here, so we had a break structure here, break but break structure here. So it was 3 breaks of structure ago to the low on the 4 hour. But what we did see is that this here order block got mitigated by this, and then what we had is this little wick trick here right at the high. So this wick has mitigated and grabbed liquidity from a previous wick. So there realistically will be a unmitigated order block in that area. So it's quite possible that we'll see the reaction and then price will just come up off that area and then go lower out of there, following on with that daily break structure that we've had. So yeah, AU, I'm really looking for a buy from this 15-minute refinement ideally, but overall just a buy from the 4 hour point of interest. And I think really my target would have to be this area here, because I do think price has a cause to actually sell off from that point. So while I'm not necessarily looking for sells out of that area, that will be my target. Now if we do start to see a reaction from that area, then I'll be looking at the lower time frames and seeing how the structure starts to develop on those lower time frames after we react from that area. So that's AU. We're looking for buys, and then we'll see if we can get the sells to continue the daily structure lower as well. So GU, pretty simple really. It's literally the same forecast as last week, more or less. So we've just had a break of structure to the low, and now we've got this new daily range developed with a daily high here. And I'm just looking to continue for the next impulsive leg down, following this impulsive leg, to just continue for sells on the daily. So looking at the 4 hour, we've got this clear refinement of the overall daily order block. So in an ideal world, I'll be looking at selling out of a reaction from this refinement. But if we did get a move higher up and then we got the price action that I'm looking for start to develop, I'll definitely look for sells as well out of there. I'd probably wouldn't be too interested in looking for sells immediately when it taps into this daily area. I'd be much more interested in seeing this 4 hour order block mitigated before selling. But if we do start to see maybe the 1 hour structure, 2 hour structure change after a reaction from the open of this daily point of interest, then I would start to get interested in that. But yeah, with GU it's pretty simple. Just looking for a pull back up into here and then sell off aggressively, hopefully. Now, in the shorter term, obviously, I'm predicting that we're going to go higher, and from where we are right now, that's still, 75 pips. Could even go 100 pips higher. So there's definitely room to make profit, trading it back up. Now, for the way that I view structure, there's no real major structure plays because we're currently had the break of structure here, to create this whole range, and we're still within this 1 hourly range from here to here. But within that range, what we can see is there started to be this order flow. So we've got a push, mitigation, push, mitigation, push, mitigation. So you can see that while it's not major structure, we're still basically having breaks of the minor structure and then pullbacks to mitigate the previous areas. Now, what we've had is this area here is being mitigated. So this area here mitigated by that, and we can see that there's orders there because that wick is longer than this one. So that's basically a liquidity grab, and it's a move that caused that overall impulsive nature upwards. So what we've got now is this candle here with imbalance, and we've also got the confluence that it actually did mitigate something within this minor structure. So in terms of a potential shorter term opportunity to buy up to this daily area, I'd expect something coming out of here. So definitely Monday morning, if I see something like that developing Monday New York time or Monday morning, then I'm not going to be opposed to this trade, because even though it's technically for me a minor point of interest, it does still have quite a bit of confluence. We've got mitigation flow in play. We've also got the imbalance there, so the inefficiency in price, and we have a clear reason for why price should come higher. So yeah, GU, I'm forecasting two opportunities. I'm forecasting buys out of this minor structure area, and I'm forecasting sells out of this overall major structure daily point of interest, and ideally out of a 4 hour refinement of that. Alright, so let's move on to GJ. So pound yen. So this is pretty interesting pair at the minute. We've been sat in this daily range now since the 20th of July. So the daily range is from here to here, and it's caused by it's the reason why that's the daily range is because the break of structure broke this law, creating a new law, and that's the most recent high after that. So since then, I've really just been expecting a pullback and then a break of structure. Now, in the cleanest price action, you just expect the break of structure to come there, but obviously that didn't happen. So we've had a pullback there, and then another push down, still didn't break the structure, and now we're pushing up again. Now, in terms of, it does look like we're maybe struggling to break the structure a bit, but at the same time, this high also hasn't been taken out yet. So the most recent break of structure is this to the low. So overall, my expectation is still that we're going to break this low on the daily. And I think a confluence as well for that is down here, we're going to have liquidity pretty much building up. A lot of stop losses are going to be placed there by retail traders. So it could definitely be that we are going to be still seeing this breaker structure, and the institutions are just building up the liquidity so that when they do go down, they can smash through it. Now, looking at the 4 hour recently, what we've got is breaker structure 1, breaker structure 2, and I traded this move up if any of you guys have seen my most recent trade breakdown video. And then we've got breaker structure 3. So really we're in a confirmed uptrend on the 4 hour. So in terms of the 4 hour, it really does make sense to be looking at buys right now, because that's what the 4 hour structure is telling us. Now, in terms of where to actually buy from, where this most recent breaker structure came from, if we follow it back down, it really comes from this wick here. So we've got that wick here, and then if we look within that whole candle on the 4 hour, it's this area here, and we can see that there's a wick here which is a lot longer than the previous wick. So if we see a pullback before we reach the daily extreme, then really the ideal place to buy from in terms of this 4 hour range is going to be that wick down there. So right now I'd definitely still be interested in taking buys out of there, because as well, even though my expectation is that we're going to travel back down, we could easily just react off one of these this 4 hour order block and then break higher. But the thing with that 4 hour order block, it is quite a deep retracement, like it's 170 pips back down. Now that's a long way to go, especially if they do want to overall come down eventually. It's a long way to go back down there before coming up here and then going down. So that is one thing to be wary of with that point of interest. And for that reason, I've marked on another point of interest, which is closer to the current price. So here, if we look at the 2 hour, what we really get is the breaker structure. Breaker structure is from here. So we've got our 2 hour low here, and our previous one was there. So what we've actually had is a mitigation there, and then we've got another breaker structure. So we've got clear 2 hour order flow to look for continuations higher. And this one isn't such a big retracement, it's only 60 pips, so this area does seem more likely for a shorter term buy. Now, looking at what caused this, we've got basically this sell candle here and then this wick here. So on the 1 hour, it's a similar story, and again, this wick is your most extreme place where we could really look for buys from. So for me, I'm looking for also buys on this shorter term situation here on GJ, and that's buys just to continue this overall bullish order flow which is taking place. And the confluence for this area as well, this imbalance here shows price inefficiency, so it makes sense for the price to come back down. And in terms of where will it react from, I'd say most likely it'll be reacting from this wick here to continue the mitigation flow to go higher. Now, in terms of this overall sell move, so with the buy moves, like you never know where they're really going to go to. It could go on for ages, but all we can do with the buys is just continue the order flow and just try and set reasonable targets based on what's currently happening with price. But in terms of the sell move, it's still a very valid situation for sells. And this box I've got marked here, I think the sells could pretty much come from anywhere within this box. But there's a couple of things I've noticed. So back here, we have this breaker structure here, which creates this range on the 4 hour. And that comes from this area up here. And then we had another break, and that was it. And then price started going back up. So in that sense, I think we've still got potentially unmitigated orders within this sort of consolidation up here. So I think it's possibly, well, potentially it could happen that price will just react from this area here before moving back down, and that would make sense because there's going to be orders in this area. So seeing it react there would make sense. So if we do start to get that reaction, we could definitely look for sells to take it all the way back down on the daily, take out this liquidity. But what I have noticed is, in terms of the whole overall daily structure, so we know that the daily structure started from this wick here down to that wick down there. So if I just look on bar replay, what was going on back here. Now, looking at the 5 minute, looking on the 5 minute, what we can see is we've got this area at the high here, and it's got imbalance below it, which hasn't really been filled because, yeah, this came back up, but we've still got this whole area here with imbalance. And on top of that, this wick here grabs liquidity from the previous candle above it. So this is the complete origin point of the whole daily move, and since then this point hasn't been revisited. So really there's still an unmitigated order block at the high up here which hasn't been taken out by price. So what I'd really love to see, and this would be the most ideal situation I think in terms of looking for the sells, is we see a move right up to the extreme of the daily range to tap that refinement of the daily order block on the 5 minute, and then we move down from there out of the extreme. And in terms of what's happened recently, I do think that that would make a lot of sense, because if we're still going to see this move down, and they've already been up there, they've been up there, and they've already been up to the highs here. If they're moving back up to the highs before moving down, then you've got to think, why is that happening? And in my mind, a good reason why that might be happening is because there's that unmitigated order block there at the extreme of the daily range. And also, you know, we're going to have liquidity building above these highs here, and we'll have liquidity above that high there. So let's see what happens on GJ. But on the daily, overall, I'm still going to be expecting that we will be breaking this low before we break this high. So I'll be looking for sells in terms of the daily. But then on the 4 hour and the 2 hour, I can clearly see that we've got bullish order flow. So on the in terms of the 4 hour structure, I'm looking at buying out of this wick. And then in terms of the shorter time frame structure, I'm looking at buying out of this wick here just to continue to the high. So in an ideal world, yeah, we'd probably see price go literally up to there and then start reversing. So let's see what happens on GJ, but it's a pretty interesting situation, and we've been in this daily range for a while now, so I'll be interested to see how it ends up playing out. Alright, and finally, so I wasn't going to put a new on this week, but in the end I just checked it and I seen an attractive opportunity, so I thought it'd be silly not to put it on really. So we've got this overall downtrend on NU, but then we did have our break structure to the high. Now, you know, NU and AU, they're pretty highly correlated, so it's similar to what we've seen on AU, but the structure is just slightly different because of how the candles are formed. But we've still got to trade what we see, and on NU, if we do follow that overall break structure to the high, we could see something play out of here. But regardless of that situation, of whether we see the buy, or what I honestly think is more likely is we'll continue to sell through it and just see that as a liquidity grab. Regardless of that, what we clearly have is a reason for price to come down to here. So that's the origin point of that overall move. So even if we are going to continue higher, then the institutions are going to come down here to mitigate their orders. Also, we've still got unfilled imbalance here. So it really makes sense that the institutions, regardless of what they're going to do, are going to come and fill these imbalances. Now, looking at the 4 hour, if we look, where did the most recent break structure happen? It's just over here where this low was broken by this. And if we look at if we look at which order block caused that break structure, it's very, very clear that it's this candle here. And that candle also has imbalance, and it occurs after this mitigation and liquidity grab took place from this order block here. So that's the reason why I put NU on that. I'm really confident in this order block, so I do honestly think that we could see a good reaction from this order block, at least down to the low, if not potentially even further. Because, like I say, I still think that this most likely was just a liquidity grab, and then we're going to continue even lower. So 100%, if we see a reaction out of there, I'm going to be looking at taking sells on NU. So I think that's it, guys. Thanks for watching my forecast this week. If you made it this far, then thank you very much. And please subscribe to my channel, because I'd be really grateful if you guys could subscribe and help my channel grow. And I will keep putting out these forecasts. I'll try to do it every week, but definitely most weeks I should have a forecast for you guys. I'll put out some trade breakdowns, and I'll put out some other Forex related content as my channel grows and as time goes on. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you guys have a good trading week and a safe trading week. And if you've got anything to comment about my analysis or any questions, then feel free to just drop it in the comments and I'll reply to you guys when I see it. Alright, thanks guys, so have a good day.